Welcome to the digestive system part 2, where we are going to pick up where we left off in the small intestine and then make our way through the large intestine and also go through all of the anatomy, the organs that are found in the digestive tract, as well as the accessory organs that are found attached to the digestive tract. The last thing I want to pick up on, or pick up with, I should say, is the last little bit we talked about the absorption of nutrients in the small intestine through structures called villi and microvilli. I wanted to reiterate that these structures increase surface area. And if you have high surface area, that's going to give you higher absorption of your nutrients. If you didn't have villi and you just had a flat tube with no little, I guess I should say projections, that flat tube would have actually lower surface area. And that would essentially, unfortunately, give you lower absorption of your nutrients. So villi and microvilli are important. Now, once the food that at this point is undigested is going to enter the large intestine, your large intestine is going to be in charge of compaction of what's left and removing all of the excess water. So compaction, and the excess water is going to be absorbed. One thing to note, that where the small intestine meets the large intestine, you have a tiny little sac called the appendix. And your food should go into the large intestine, and it typically go the right way, quote unquote. But if anything actually gets caught in that little tiny sac and can't leave, that little sac can ferment and get larger and larger, because undigested food, as it ferments, creates gas. And if it were to rupture, the bacteria can spill into your inner body cavity, and that can cause appendicitis, and that's not good. But essentially, the appendix is located where the large intestine and small intestine meet. And there is a picture on the next page, and it is not labeled, but that is where the appendix is. And I'll come back to that anatomy later. So we want to quickly talk about what the accessory organs are. Accessory organs are not in the actual GI tract itself. They are attached to it, and they are namely the liver, the pancreas, and the gallbladder. Now, let's start with the pancreas. The pancreas plays a role in maintaining blood sugar levels. It neutralizes acids from the stomach with a compound called sodium bicarbonate. You know this as baking soda. And it's involved with continuing to break down the macromolecules that you consume by releasing enzymes. Examples of the enzymes that the pancreas produces are trypsin, which continues to digest the proteins that you were digesting, and I did not mean to add an I there. I apologize. Trypsin. Trypsin continues to digest the proteins that had begun to be digested by pepsin in the stomach. The pancreas makes pancreatic amylase. the same kind of amylase that was used in the mouth to digest carbohydrates, starches, and lipases, which break down fats. So those are the enzymes, some of the enzymes that the pancreas makes. It also makes insulin. And insulin is a hormone that is responsible for maintaining the proper blood sugar levels in the body. The pancreas is shown in the picture off to the right. I'm going to just change the color here, and I'm going to outline it in blue. And how the anatomy would be the stomach would be kind of coming off over here. And as the contents of the stomach begin to dump in to the duodenum, the pancreas essentially is going to squirt its enzymes and its sodium bicarbonate onto the chyme that's coming from the stomach and essentially inject all of those enzymes into the chyme so that it can continue to work as it's traveling through the small intestine. So enzymes plus sodium bicarbonate. And the sodium bicarbonate is going to, again, neutralize the stomach acid so that that acid does not irritate the lining of your small intestine. The other accessory organ is the liver, and the liver is a very complex organ. I'm going to outline the liver over here in red. It's very large, and it sits right under your diaphragm, which separates your thoracic or chest cavity with your abdominal cavity. So your lungs would be up here, and the liver would sit right underneath it. Its job is to produce bile. And bile is stored in the gallbladder. Now, bile is a green substance, so I'm going to go over here and color the gallbladder green. Bile is an emulsifier. And what that means is it makes fat droplets smaller. And if I were to draw that for you, I'll just change to, like, let's say a yellow. If, let's say, you've got just a really, really big glob of fat, if you've ever had salad dressing before and you've had a lot of oil and you shake it up really, really, you shake really, really hard and you get tiny little droplets of oil, that's essentially like what emulsification is. You make the fat droplets smaller so that in turn lipases can act on the fat much more efficiently. So by making them smaller, then enzymes can act on them because essentially you are decreasing the volume and increasing surface area. So that helps with digestion to make it more efficient. So that's what bile does. But remember, bile is actually made in the liver and then put into the gallbladder for storage. So the gallbladder stores bile that was made, and then that also is going to be squirted onto, for lack of a better word, the chyme that's coming from the stomach to help break down those fats. The liver helps to detoxify the blood. So, for example, alcohol is processed in the liver and essentially broken down to less toxic substances. And then a third function is it is involved with storing fat and excess sugar in the form of what's called glycogen. And glycogen is chains of glucose. Not quite starch, but longer chains of glucose that are essentially meant for storage in the body. Now, the last page goes over the notes of the anatomy in the digestive tract. So let's see if we can quickly label the parts of the alimentary canal, which is your GI tract, as well as the accessory organs. Unfortunately, they don't quite go in order, but we're gonna, kind of jump around a little bit here and there. So A is the oral cavity. And I'm going to do my best to do a little bit of highlighting here. So we'll do that one in red. B is the back of the throat, which is called the pharynx. And we'll do that one in orange. I'm going to jump down to M for just a second. M is what's called the epiglottis. The epiglottis is a flap in the back of the throat that prevents food from going down your windpipe or trachea so that you don't choke. So as you swallow, the epiglottis folds down and covers your trachea so that you don't bring water and solids into your windpipe, which could essentially cause you to choke. C is your esophagus. So that's the tube that leads to your stomach. So we're going to color that green. D is stomach. E is small intestine. Remember, small is the diameter, is referring to the diameter and not the length. So we'll color that blue. F is large intestine. And again, remember diameter. The large intestine is larger in diameter than the small intestine. We'll color that a lighter. Actually, we'll do a darker purple or darker blue. So we'll do that. If you didn't already label it, make sure you label the appendix and where that is, because there is no separate label for that one. G is the final end section of the large intestine where solid waste is stored before it is removed from the body, and that's called the rectum. We'll color that light purple. And H is the ring of muscle that's a sphincter that holds solid waste in before it is eliminated from the body, and that's called the anus, A-N-U-S. And we will color that dark purple. Now, some of our accessory organs. I are salivary glands. And those are going to be back in the oral cavity. And they make salivary amylase, which has amylase in it, obviously, and then water and some other organic compounds that moisten the food. And then again, that amylase begins to work on the carbohydrate digestion. J is the liver. We'll go gold with that one. Remember that very large organ that's going to sit underneath the diaphragm. K is the gallbladder. Remember that stores bile made by the liver. So we'll also color that green, just maybe a different shade of green. And then finally L, pancreas, which sits tucked underneath the stomach, somewhat horizontally underneath the stomach. And we'll do that one in gray. And that epiglottis I forgot to highlight was, I believe, yellow. And that's it. So there are all of the organs and structures in the digestive tract. And that is the last page of your notes.